It's been a month and I've been working really hard on the car. I got a lot of things put on, a lot of issues sorted out. Still a long ways to go, but I'll give you an update for what I have over the last month. We can start with the cooling system. As you see, the front nose is put on, including the radiator. My donor came with a Mishimoto aftermarket radiator, so I'm using that. You see it runs down to these accordion style coolant hoses. This is the inlet from the hot engine, comes in the top, cools down the radiator, and then exits down here. And it runs down this tube along the side. There's an identical tube on the other side for the inlet. This runs back here to the engine. And it connects right in there. You'll notice that I have the vent clamped off here next to the radiator cap, and also the vent over here in the corner capped off too. That's for a very good reason, and I'll show you in the back. Instead of allowing venting at the radiator, I tapped this metal coolant pipe. So there's a barb sticking out, which this hose is attached to. And this hose runs around here to my coolant degas bottle. So the purpose of the coolant degas bottle is to separate the coolant and the air in the system. You want the system completely full of fluid with no air pockets. This helps all the fluid circulate well and transfer heat out of the engine and the radiator. So you do not want air in the system, and this will self-bleed the air out. I started to wire up the front of the car. You have your main cable here that runs back to the starter. It needs a lot of power, so it's a very thick cable. I think it's a 2 gauge, if I'm not wrong. I've also allowed these wires to come up here. The headlights are in there, but I'm not ready to put the headlights on, so those are just kind of hanging out for the moment. What I do have wired up right now are the fans on the back of the radiator. So you see that connection down here. And the horns, these little round discs hanging out in front. I've been organizing and running these wires over here. A lot of this stuff is still just hanging out temporarily. Until I get the sheet metal on the inside of the car, I can't really mount it. So for now, it's just gonna hang there, and when I drive the go-kart, this will just verify that everything is working correctly, and if it's not, at least it's out in the open and easy to fix. Originally, there were just these few connections hanging off the steering wheel, and I could not get the gauges to work and the blinkers to come on, and some of the features just to function. So I went on the forums, and a few of you guys pointed out, and I had to take off the bottom cover of the steering wheel because I didn't know that there were connections hidden under there. So once I found those 3 or 4 missing connections, everything started to work a little better. Since several of the bulbs were burned out, I took the opportunity to upgrade the lighting to LED lights. I had tried a cheap blue set from eBay, which I did not like. For $12, I got these white lights, and it turned my old kind of dark green lighting into this updated light green, which I like a lot more. In the middle of fitting the rear firewall, this is the one that comes with the kit. It is 1/8 inch aluminum, so pretty thick. And this will separate me from the gas tank and the engine. This is for safety and important to get right. I had to raise this driver's side to clear my fuel tank, my aftermarket fuel tank. Did not clear before, but now you can see there's a little bit of room above it. So that was necessary to make that work. And underneath, I have a second firewall that I put in as an option. I'll show you in a second. This firewall gives the engine bay a nice clean surface. The kit does not include this, so if you just built according to Factory 5, you'd be able to see all of the wiring and gas tank and hoses. This black firewall hides that, which I like. I think that looks so much cleaner, having a nice solid background in the engine bay. So now that I have everything cut and fitted and mounted, I'm going to add some sound deadening on the back side of this, just to give me a little more comfort in the cabin. Keep some of that heat and noise from this thing out of the cabin. I have the air intake temporarily mounted. My donor came with an AEM aftermarket intake, so I'm just using that for now. It should be pretty close to its final position. It will take air in from the side scoops on the side of the car, so it should be pretty similar to this location. But for now, I just bought this silicone elbow, hung it out here so I can go kart and check everything else while I'm working on the car before I finish it. Not really sure this has to be until I put the body on, so that's where to live for now. I also got the intercooler mounted. See that? It's just about the last thing I need to put on the engine before I can seal it up and close it off in anticipation of my first start, which you will see. And with the wheels stationary on the ground, I was finally able to remove a nut that was in the back of the transmission. So I removed the nut, put in the two-wheel drive adapter. The transmission now is converted to two-wheel drive from all-wheel drive. And then you add a little sealant, pop this plate on, and the transmission is sealed and filled. The shifter was hilariously tall with the stock shifting shaft. So I ordered this Torque Solutions short shifter kit, and it not only lowered the top of this by about 2¼ inches, but it straightened it out. The stock shaft had a big kink in it. It was like leaning way forward. Normally, the shifter is mounted like this, and the cables run out the front of the car. And at the front, they loop around, run down the side, and connect to the transmission in the back. It's this crazy long loop. It's got a lot of slop in it, it's complicated, not the best, but Factory 5 does that because the transmission on the Subaru is made to have cables running out the front. Usually the engine's in the front of the Subaru, right? So the shifter is made to run cables to the front. But in this case, the engine's in the back, so the shifting directions are reversed. Factory 5 took the cheap and easy way, so they just ran, like I said, a cable all the way around the car. And then at the back, it pulls everything in the right direction for the shifting pattern. What I'm gonna do is flip this shifter around so the cables are now coming out of the back. They're going to run through this hole over here and back to the transmission. So instead of a 14-foot loop, it'll be more like a 7-foot direct run from here to there. So you don't have as much slop, you don't have extra connections, and just this crazy loop running around the car. This is more direct, and it should give you a more confidence-inspiring shifting. Less slop overall. But since I'm running the cables out the back instead of the front, the shifting will be backwards at the transmission. So this bell crank basically converts those backward motions into the correct motions. It's just here to allow you to shift in the correct pattern now that the cables are running out of the back. So pull and push in the right directions. I went with the Anki TS10 rims. To me, they look kind of like the newer Porsche rims, so I thought that was a nice modern look. I almost went with 5-spoke, but those look kind of 90s to me. So this is what I went with. My first set of tires did not fit the front rims very well, so I swapped all the tires with a new Kumhos so that the front would look a little better. The front had an ugly lip that I'll show you in a picture. So the engine's all closed up. Got the intake, the intercooler, transmission's blocked off. Put engine oil in the engine, transmission oil in the transmission. Got coolant bled throughout the system. It's time to start the car. And the way you prime the oil system before you start the engine is you remove the spark plugs and you crank the engine for like 30 seconds at a time. That took me about 5 or 6 tries. So you're cranking the engine and you take the spark plugs out so it's not going to start, but your goal is just to get oil pressure built up in the engine. So when you do start the engine for the first time, it has oil to lubricate and cool and keep everything running smoothly. You don't want to start a dry engine and have that much friction and heat and just stuff, rubbing and wearing out. You need to have oil ready to circulate and lubricate as soon as you start. So like I said, 5 or 6 tries of those 30-second cranks, and eventually my oil pressure light went out on my dash. So that's when I knew it was time to start it. Don't forget a couple gallons of gas. Cars like to run on gas.